When the American Civil War began in 1861, African Americans stood at the center of the conflict. Yet they were excluded from most of its early decisions. The war began as a fight to preserve the Union. It was not initially a war to end slavery. Millions of African Americans remained enslaved in the South. Free black communities existed in the North, but they faced discrimination. African Americans understood what the war meant for their future. They knew its outcome would shape their lives for generations. At the outbreak of war, black men rushed to offer their service. Many wanted to fight for the Union immediately. They believed military service could prove their loyalty and humanity. The federal government rejected them. Racist beliefs shaped military policy. Most white Americans doubted black soldiers' abilities. The U.S. Army barred African Americans from enlistment. This decision angered black communities. They argued that freedom and citizenship must be earned through sacrifice. Despite rejection, African Americans supported the Union cause. Enslaved people resisted slavery in subtle and direct ways. They slowed work. They sabotaged equipment. They spread information. As Union armies advanced, enslaved people fled to Union lines. They risked punishment, capture, and death. These fugitives were called contrabands of war. Union commanders were unsure how to handle them. Some returned them to enslavers. Others offered protection. African Americans forced the issue of slavery onto the battlefield. Their presence made neutrality impossible. They labored for Union forces as cooks, teamsters, and builders. They provided intelligence about Confederate movements. They guided troops through unfamiliar terrain. Southern enslavers grew fearful. Plantations were destabilized. The Confederate economy weakened. African Americans understood the power of their actions. They knew the war created opportunity. They pushed the Union toward emancipation. Free black leaders petitioned President Abraham Lincoln. They demanded the right to fight. They argued that the war could not be won without black participation. Northern abolitionists echoed these demands. Pressure on the government increased. As casualties mounted, attitudes slowly shifted. The Union needed manpower. The moral purpose of the war began to change. Slavery became impossible to ignore. African Americans transformed the war's meaning through their actions. They were not passive victims. They were active participants. Their struggle began before they were officially allowed to fight. It began with resistance, courage, and determination. The Civil War was already becoming a war about freedom, and African Americans were forcing the nation to confront that reality. By 1862, the Civil War was not going as the Union had expected. The conflict was longer and bloodier than anticipated. Union casualties mounted at an alarming rate. Public support began to waver. At the same time, enslaved people continued fleeing to Union lines. Their presence forced a political decision. Slavery could no longer be treated as a separate issue. President Abraham Lincoln faced immense pressure. Abolitionists demanded action. Military leaders needed manpower. Foreign governments watched closely. Britain and France considered recognizing the Confederacy. Lincoln understood the importance of redefining the war. In September 1862, he announced the Emancipation Proclamation. The proclamation took effect on January 1, 1863. It declared enslaved people in Confederate-held territory to be free. Though limited, its impact was profound. The war became a fight against slavery. The proclamation discouraged European support for the Confederacy. It also opened the door for black enlistment. The Union Army officially allowed African American soldiers. This decision marked a turning point. Recruitment began almost immediately. African American men volunteered in large numbers. They came from northern free black communities. They escaped from southern plantations. They traveled long distances to enlist. The formation of the United States Colored Troops followed. These regiments were segregated. White officers commanded them. Discrimination was widespread. Black soldiers received lower pay. They were often given dangerous assignments. Training was sometimes inadequate. Despite these challenges, morale remained strong. Black soldiers believed their service mattered. They fought not only for the Union, They fought for their own freedom and dignity. Families supported their decision with pride and fear. Enlistment carried serious risks. If captured, black soldiers faced brutal treatment. Many were executed or re-enslaved. The Confederacy refused to recognize them as legitimate soldiers. White officers commanding black troops were also targeted. These dangers did not stop recruitment. African American leaders encouraged participation. Frederick Douglass became one of the most powerful voices. He argued that military service would earn citizenship. He declared that once a black man wore the uniform, freedom could not be denied. Thousands believed him. Training camps filled quickly. Regiments prepared for combat. The nation watched closely. Skeptics doubted their effectiveness. Supporters hoped they would change the course of the war. African Americans had waited centuries for this moment. Now, they would fight for their future. Their participation transformed the Union Army. It also transformed the meaning of the Civil War. Freedom was no longer a distant promise. It was becoming a reality forged in battle. When African American soldiers entered combat, they faced intense scrutiny. Many white Americans expected them to fail. Black soldiers understood they were fighting under a microscope. Every action would be judged as a test of their worth. Training had been harsh and unequal. Supplies were often inferior. Pay was lower than that of white soldiers. Yet determination remained strong. One regiment became especially famous. The 54th Massachusetts Infantry was formed in 1863. It was one of the first official African American regiments. Its soldiers came from across the North. They were led by white officers sympathetic to abolition. Colonel Robert Gould Shaw commanded the unit. The regiment trained intensively. They prepared not only for combat, they prepared to challenge prejudice. Their defining moment came at Fort Wagner. Fort Wagner guarded Charleston Harbor in South Carolina. It was heavily fortified. In July 1863, the 54th Massachusetts led the assault. They charged directly into deadly fire. Confederate defenders unleashed artillery and rifle fire. Casualties were devastating. Colonel Shaw was killed during the attack. Despite heavy losses, the regiment did not retreat. Their bravery shocked the nation. Although the assault failed militarily, it succeeded symbolically. Newspapers reported their courage. Public opinion began to shift. The myth of black inferiority in combat was shattered. Other African American regiments soon saw action. They fought in battles across the South. They served in sieges and assaults. They guarded supply lines. They engaged Confederate forces directly. In many engagements, black soldiers fought with distinction. Their discipline and resolve impressed Union commanders. Despite this, discrimination continued. Black troops were often assigned labor duties. They built fortifications, they repaired roads, they dug trenches under fire. Their contributions were essential to Union success. They fought not only against the Confederacy, they fought against racism within their own army. Captured black soldiers faced extreme danger. At places like Fort Pillow, atrocities occurred. Confederate forces massacred surrendering black troops. These events hardened resolve among African American soldiers. They knew surrender might mean death. This knowledge fueled fierce resistance. By war's end, nearly 180,000 African American men had served. They made up a significant portion of Union forces. Their service helped turn the tide of the war. Victory became possible because of their sacrifice. They proved their bravery beyond doubt. They proved their loyalty beyond question. The battlefield became a place of transformation. African Americans claimed their role as defenders of the nation. It also changed the future of the United States. The war was no longer simply about preserving the Union. It was about redefining who belonged within it. African American contributions to the Civil War extended far beyond combat. The war reshaped every aspect of black life. Men, women, and children were drawn into the struggle. Their roles were diverse and essential. African American women played a critical part in the war effort. Many served as nurses for Union soldiers. They cared for the wounded under harsh conditions. Others worked as cooks, laundresses, and seamstresses. These jobs were exhausting and poorly paid. Yet they were vital to Army survival. Some women acted as spies and informants. They gathered intelligence behind Confederate lines. Their knowledge of local terrain was invaluable. Enslaved women risked severe punishment to help Union forces. Families supported the war in every way possible. Wives and children endured separation and uncertainty. They faced hunger, disease, and violence. Freedom often came at great personal cost. African Americans also served as laborers for the Union Army. They built roads, bridges, and fortifications. They repaired railroads and transported supplies. These tasks were dangerous and relentless. Laborers often worked near front lines. They faced artillery fire and harsh conditions. Despite this, their contributions were frequently overlooked. African American labor made Union campaigns possible. Intelligence gathering was another critical role. Formerly enslaved people provided crucial information. They identified Confederate troop movements. They revealed supply routes and weaknesses. Union commanders increasingly relied on this intelligence. The war also transformed enslaved communities. As Union armies advanced, plantations collapsed. Enslaved people seized the moment to escape. They established contraband camps near Union lines. Life in these camps was difficult. Disease and overcrowding were common, yet they represented hope and freedom. Education became a priority. African Americans established schools and camps. Teachers arrived from the North. Literacy symbolized liberation. Religion offered strength and unity. Churches became centers of community life. Faith sustained families through hardship. African Americans also contributed financially. They donated wages to support soldiers' families. They funded schools and relief organizations. The war accelerated social change. Black communities organized politically. They demanded rights and recognition. Military service strengthened these demands. African Americans believed sacrifice deserved reward. They expected freedom, citizenship, and equality. The war raised difficult questions for the nation. What would freedom truly mean? Would equality follow emancipation? These questions remained unanswered. African Americans had given everything. They had earned their place in American history. The battlefield was only one front. The struggle for dignity extended into daily life. Their contributions reshaped the war's outcome. They also reshaped the nation's future. When the Civil War ended in 1865, slavery was destroyed in law. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery throughout the United States. For African Americans, freedom was finally recognized, yet freedom did not mean equality. The war had changed the nation, but it had not resolved all injustice. African American soldiers returned home as veterans. They expected rights equal to their sacrifice. Many believed military service had earned them citizenship. Black communities celebrated victory with hope and pride. Families reunited after years of separation. Churches rang with thanksgiving. Schools expanded rapidly. Education became a symbol of progress. African Americans participated actively in Reconstruction. They voted, held office, and shaped new governments. The 14th Amendment granted citizenship. The 15th Amendment protected voting rights. For a brief period, progress seemed possible. However, resistance emerged quickly. Former Confederate leaders regained power. White supremacist groups used violence and intimidation. Black veterans were targeted. Lynchings and terror campaigns spread fear. Federal protection weakened over time. Reconstruction collapsed by the late 1870s. Jim Crow laws followed. Segregation became entrenched. Voting rights were stripped away. Economic exploitation continued. Despite this, African American resilience endured. The memory of Civil War service remained powerful. Veterans told their stories. Communities preserved their sacrifices. Their service became a foundation for future struggles. The Civil War demonstrated African Americans' loyalty and courage. It disproved racist assumptions permanently. It reshaped American military policy. African Americans would serve in every future war. The legacy of the Civil War influenced the civil rights movement. Leaders invoked the promises of emancipation. They demanded fulfillment of constitutional rights. The struggle for equality continued across generations. The Civil War marked a turning point. African Americans were no longer invisible in the nation's story. They had fought for the Union. They had fought for freedom. They had helped save the United States. Their contributions were undeniable. Yet the nation failed to fully honor them. The promise of freedom remained incomplete. Still, the legacy endured. African Americans had reshaped the meaning of citizenship. They had claimed their place in history through sacrifice. The Civil War proved that freedom is not given, it is defended, and it must be protected by every generation.